Hey guys, it's Tony, and we're back on the bench. And this evening, we're going to be doing a disassembly service, specifically a walkthrough disassembly service only on a new reel, accurate SR-20 twin spin. Okay, so I recently previewed this reel with a bunch of other reels, and it's finally coming around to getting to this one here. So I want to give a big shout out to Matt Harper from Accurate, uh, just to get some insight on how this reel works internally and whatnot. It's got a lot of pieces to it, and it's bulletproof. It's a solid piece of equipment. So we want to go through all the take apart steps, and being that I've already cleaned it and re-lubed it and whatnot, we'll talk about that as we go along. So we're just going to start here with some of the basic stuff, and there's some tools that you're going to need. If you have this same reel and you want to service it, they're basic tools more or less, but there's still quite a few of them that you need to kind of get into it. So I'll talk about that as we go here. So handle and the side cap. Okay. Now we've got our rotor assembly here. Now this is a special design here that they've made, and it's part of the twin drag system, made for this reel. Okay, so there's this locking nut here in the center, and you want to loosen that up counterclockwise in order to take this off. You don't want to use the the full tab here and try to turn that. All right, you want to spin this knob there. That's the first thing that you want to make note of. Okay, then you can pull your whole rotor and drag assembly off. Okay, now we're going to talk about this section first. Okay, and Accurate's got a really good video on how to do this, and it's they go through all the steps. We're going to do that right now as well, just in this video, and then we'll get to the rest of the reel after we're done here. Okay, so there's two screws here that have to come out, but before you do that, you actually have to take apart this top cap, and you should be able to do it with hand pressure, and if not, it might help to have a rubber glove on to get enough grip. But this cap has to come off first. Okay, like so. It's helpful to clean up the inside here the best that you can. Okay, now we've got access here. So we've got drag washers on both top and bottom on this assembly. Okay, so you just want to make note of that. Now, one of the special tools that you're going to need is a really small Phillips head screwdriver, such as this one. Okay, and that's going to take these two screws out here in these positions. Okay, and I highly recommend when you're working on this reel, print out the schematic. Okay, you can see there are tons and tons of parts, small parts for that matter. It's actually 117 parts total if you read this here. Okay, just have this on hand, okay, because it might help you out. And then also, I just happen to have the user manual, which is a little helpful because it talks a little bit about the reel, about how it works, its features and whatnot, that preset lock that we just talked about, and the reference marks, on the top cap and whatnot. So, that's helpful to have. And, also just kind of a blow up here of the whole spool assembly. I'm just going to keep this nearby just so I can look at that right now, actually. So you want to take these screws out gently. They're very, very small. Put those in the parts tray there. Okay, and then at this point, you should be able to loosen up this top nut here. Now, notice we've got washer city going on here. Now, these are concave washers. Okay, and you want to make note of the orientation of these washers and make sure that they go back the same way that you took them off. Okay, so the bottom one is actually a slightly thicker one if you read the diagram that I just showed you, okay? But you want to make sure these go back the same way that you took them out. And these two are actually thinner washers, these concave washers, and they kind of make like a, almost like a clam shell style shape here, okay? So you just want to make sure that you get that right, okay? Then we've got big metal disc washer, and then we've got our Carbon-Tex drag washer, okay? And then there's a few other things here that are going to come apart on you as you do this, all right? But again, have the schematic nearby and you'll be fine, okay? So there's a few things here to make note of. There's a couple of washers here, very thin shim washers, okay? Come out. Now before we get into the rest of this, I want to make note here for you that there is a bearing here. All bearings in this reel are sealed bearings. You don't need to service them per se, at least that's what the the manual indicates. They should last a very long time, just with a little bit of basic reel maintenance and care, okay? And that just goes throughout the entire reel. Now, to get this bottom section out here, this is where you need another special tool. Okay, in this case, I'm using a 1/4-inch nut driver, and what you need to do is you need to kind of set this down in there where it will hit the metal drag washer under here and just kind of give it a few light taps, okay, and then it'll take this plate off because it kind of snaps in, so to speak. It's a little tricky to do, but once you get the knack of it, it's not too bad. Just give it a little tap like that, and you see it comes right out, okay? All right, now for the other parts that are under here, it's very simple. Just like on top, essentially, metal washer, drag washer, you got that bottom cap, and then there's a bearing down here, same as up here, okay? So when you're doing this, obviously you want to clean up all these pieces and parts, okay? You just need to do whatever you got to do to clean up all the old grease off, okay? And then when you go back, I actually use some Cal's Star Drag grease here, the tan color. I've got a little cap full of it here, okay? And then you just want to go back just with that grease on these washers here, essentially, and just put that light film. I've already done this, and so I'm not going to load these up again, okay? But just to show you, that's what you do. But you want to make sure these washers are nice and clean and free of any sand or salt. These reels take a lot of abuse, okay? So you want to make sure that you clean them up really well when you're doing these services here, okay? And then when you're ready, you clean up in here and then go back and put your drag washer back in place, okay? And then you put your metal washer back in place, and then the cap will go back in like so. Okay, and then it's the same deal, just the reverse order, going back through all these washers here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to set off all these pieces and parts off to the side, being that this is only for the disassembly, and then in the separate video of the reassembly, all these pieces will go back together. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to get into the rest of the reel. Now, this does get a little tricky in here, so I highly recommend that schematic and just being patient, okay, and taking your time. So here we've got 4 screws. Now, this is another tool that you're going to need, is a Torx driver. This is a T10, okay, and you want to take these off first. Have those parts trays nearby because you're going to need them for a lot of these small screws that you're taking out of here. I wanted to do this walkthrough service in one video, but there's just so many parts and you really have to pay attention to detail with this one, and so I wanted to divide it up, make it a little easier. Okay, so we got our 4 screws out. Take our side plate off. Okay. All right, so make note. We've got some pieces here. We've got a washer. It's basically a rubber washer. Okay, so you don't want to lose that, and that rests down in here. And then you've got a bearing, a side bearing. Again, these are sealed. You do not need to service them. The only thing you should do is just clean them. And it doesn't hurt to apply a light film of oil on them just to ensure that the outer edge doesn't rust or anything like that at any given point. This is a nice, stainless steel, piece of equipment here. And so, there's, that's why you don't see a lot of rust. But, from time to time it can build up, in certain little areas. So here, you want to also make note, you've got 2 shim washers here. Now you can just leave them there, but you want to account for them and make sure that you don't lose them. Okay. Now at this point, you should be able to pull out your main gear. Okay. And that's what the main gear looks like. Nice, big main gear, the teeth on there and whatnot. Okay. So, you want to clean all this up, of course, and clean all the old grease off as you go. Take the WD-40, take toothbrushes, take brass wire brushes such as this, okay? And it's the same drill pretty much for, cleaning any fishing reel. You want to get all the old dirt and grime out of there and just clean it up the best you can, okay? Now we've got the rest of our innards here. So we're looking at a few different pieces here, and it's a great design. It's very, very solid. Okay, now the first thing that you need to make note of is that there is no set screw that holds this main shaft to this crosswind block. Okay, and this is one of the moments where I had to think about it a little bit, and I'm looking at the schematic and I'm saying, okay, well, how does that come out? Well, you actually have to take out the rotor assembly first, and in order to do that, you have to get to this pin, and on the side of this pin there's a tiny little black washer. You can't even really see it on the camera right now, but I'm going to take it off here for you so you can just see how small that is. Okay, and once you have that off, you don't want to lose it. That's the first step. Okay, and then you can pull this pin. Then you can come up here to your rotor nut, all right? And this is where you need another tool. You need a Phillips, like a size 1 Phillips for this set screw here, okay? And we're going to take that screw out. Lots of small pieces here, okay? And then we have this rotor nut, which is a 9/16. I believe it's a 9/16. Okay, it's actually a 14 millimeter, actually. I'm not sure where I got the 9/16 from. That must have been from a different project. So make sure you got a 14 mil wrench nearby. Okay, now be careful taking this off because there's other pieces hiding underneath it. Okay, so you've got a rubber washer here first. Okay, make note of the orientation because you need to put these things back in the same order that you took them out in. And then there's a small bearing. Okay, and again, a reminder, you don't need to service these bearings. Okay, you want to clean them off with WD-40 if nothing else, and that's pretty much all you can do. Now, you should be able to pull your rotor off gently, like so. Okay, so that's your rotor assembly. Now, in terms of the bail system and whatnot, all you need to do, spray a little WD-40 on the seams here, okay, to work that, okay? And this is actually a manual bail system here in this particular case. I guess there was a design change at a certain point where they had an automatic trip system, and this one is not that one, okay? Make note, there's washers hiding under here, okay? They kind of get stuck under there. All right, so you don't want to lose those. All right, so I like to kind of lay all this out so that I can see, what all this looks like so that I know how it has to go back. Okay. Now, you still can't get this out yet. You're not ready to do that. You got to get these pieces out, and that's going to require an Allen wrench. I don't know exactly what size this is because it's really, really small. It is an American one, though. So you're going to need a set of Allen wrenches nearby if you're going to get this apart. So I wasn't joking when I said there's lots of pieces, so that's why it's also equally important just to take your time, because you don't want to lose any of those pieces or break any of the pieces or any of that kind of stuff. So, and when in doubt, definitely take pictures along the way, or put an email out to the manufacturer, like I had to in this case, because there was a couple of things that I just needed to know for sure how to work on, because I did not want to break anything. And according to Accurate, a lot of parts for this model are not available anymore. They still do like drag washers and some of the things that wear and tear real easily, but there's a lot of other pieces that are just not made anymore for this model. Okay, so now you can lift this up, and then that's going to loosen up a few things there. Now, before we get into the rest of that, we're going to talk about this part of the assembly here. So we've got a roller bearing hiding in here. Okay, and this is our pinion gear, of course. So it's a pretty simple design. We got roller bearings in there. You want to clean up in there, okay, and then just go back with a little bit of blue grease. We'll talk about that in the reassembly. There's washers here, okay, and then you've got this main bushing here that spins in that roller bearing. Okay, so there's those pieces there. Okay, and then you've also got a bearing up here, an extra bearing that's hiding in there. All right, now for the rest of this, there's a bearing. It's hard to see at first, but it's actually hiding right here, and you have to get this bearing out actually in order to get the main shaft out. And this is the only thing that I can say is really difficult with this whole process, is just getting this bearing out in order to get the main drive shaft out. As you can see, I've already done all the lube on this, and so it kind of makes it a little harder to kind of go back. There was a lot of cleaning that had to be done on the inside of this reel, and so that took a lot of time. Okay, but here is that bearing. All right, and then there's also like a little grommet bushing down here, but it doesn't really prevent you from really getting this out. Okay, so at that point you can pull this out. And if that wasn't enough bearings for you, make note that there's actually two small bearings on either side of this block here, this crosswind block. Okay, but the shaft is not designed to come apart from the crosswind block. So that's just something that you need to make note of. Okay, a lot of reels, it doesn't work that way. That's how it works on this particular reel. So keep paper towels nearby, of course, as always. And then the rest of this is relatively self-explanatory. We have a crosswind gear that has to come out. That's just a number 2 Phillips. There is a bearing inside of it on the inner ring. I find it's helpful to have a pair of needle nose nearby usually for this, so that you can just kind of gently pull this out. Okay. So you got a crosswind gear. There is a Teflon washer hiding underneath that. You want to make sure that that's in good shape. Okay, and then we have this gear, and then there's also a bearing, a seal ball bearing down here as well, that does not need to be serviced. Okay, so in short, we've got pretty much all of our reel taken apart. Okay, there's a couple of small exceptions. We didn't, take apart the handle at the joint here. There's no need to. If you needed to, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just need a couple of different Allen wrenches to make that happen, and you can do that. And then as far as this bail assembly goes, there is a shield here, 2 Phillips head screws if you needed to get in here. In this case, there's no need to do that. So, that's pretty much it. You do want to squirt maybe a little bit of penetrating oil on this roller bearing, perhaps. And then in here, you just want to clean out this housing the best that you can. And then, you get ready for the reassembly. So you go through all these parts, use the WD-40, use Q-tips to clean out old grease and whatnot, use 4-0 steel wool to, the shaft and whatnot, all the, the smooth areas where, you want it to just be a really nice, clean, smooth surface on the metal washers for the drag stack and whatnot. And, use those brass wire brushes and toothbrushes, clean out all these gear teeth, make everything as clean as you can. And then when you're done with all that, you're ready for reassembly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do that shortly, and we'll do that in the separate video. And you can watch these videos and hopefully learn about how this reel works and how it goes together. And then that way you know. So thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe. Hit the notification button. That way you will be getting all the updates as to when there are new videos coming out. And shortly there will be a new video coming out, which will be the reassembly of this accurate SR-20 spin twin. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.